deletes a paragraph that you were working on and you need to restore it, then you can actually have access to the document history and revert it. But this isn't such a huge problem as people might think. I mean, it can definitely lead to some issues, but if you think about Wikipedia, Wikipedia has 14 million entries roughly at this point, and it's edited by literally thousands of people. And the problem of inadvertent data clobbering is not one that's ever really cited. The problem that people really seem to have is the problem of vandalism, where there's a malicious decision to destroy stuff. And the mechanism that Wikipedia has come up with to manage the malicious changing is that all significant changes basically are at some level flagged, and there's a group of editors that can very quickly revert a change if it's deemed to be inappropriate. So there's basically a core group of people who manage the flow of edits in such a way as to try and minimize the appearance of a kind of an unwanted change. The other thing, and even Wikipedia's own website calls them a cabal. So they're a group of editors that have privileges up and beyond the average Wikipedia user, and but it seems to work reasonably well. There's been some research that argues that this group of editors has caused the growth of Wikipedia to slow down over the last couple of years. So, if you're thinking scalability, this is a very interesting example of how humans fit into the scalability equation. It turns out that lots of social websites have kind of power users who are editors who have a lot of power over the system. Digg is another example of a site where a lot of people can contribute, but there's a core group of people who have a lot of power over whether an article you contribute is seen or not, or whether it becomes popular or not. So it's a solution, and we're still sort of discovering right now whether there are ways to take that solution and move it forward for even much larger sites. But the thing I wanted to bring up about Wikipedia that really is kind of interesting is that the question of multiple editors and inadvertent data clobbering has really not come up, even though it's very large and it's been built up over such a short period of time. There have been some serious studies to check on how good the Wikipedia data is compared to, say, Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever. And there's definitely differences of opinion, but I don't know. There's a general consensus that it's good enough, and that the error rates are not significantly different. And from a historical perspective, actually, it turns out that a lot of these big endeavors, like the Oxford English Dictionary, were put together in a very similar way. It's just that they didn't have access to a large number of contributors, but they still had editors and a select group of contributors who basically put together the Oxford English Dictionary in much the same way that the Wikipedia was done, except it was all on cards, and it was done by mail as opposed to posting it on the web, etc. All right. So finally, I wanted to, before opening things up to questions and answers and working more on the project, I wanted to look at the life cycle of files in Git and just see the way in which it's kind of similar to the life cycle of objects that we've been discussing elsewhere. So really, we've got a node here that corresponds to a file that's not in the system yet, how it gets brought into the system, and then how it gets changed and how it gets committed back into the system. So the main goal of Git is that these arrows pointing to the right here are arrows that allow you to make changes freely without interfering with anyone else's changes. And it's really at the commit step, or even more appropriately in Git, the push step, where you find out whether your changes have conflicts or not. And basically becomes the responsibility of the person who's making the most recent change to resolve any conflicts with the previous updates that were made before they're able to push their files back into the repository. So to me, the one additional really important thing about version control is that because when you're committing, you're actually writing down a little comment associated with that commit. You're effectively able to communicate to everyone else who's using the system what it is you are doing. And so Git becomes an additional communication tool that all of the other users of the system can refer to if they want to understand why things changed the way they did. So there was a question